Okay, so after I marked all where I wanted the holes to go in the bottom flange, which will go into the wood board, I marked them with just a punch. You know, I punched them to make a divot just for the drill bit so it wouldn't turn out on me. And I went over to the drill press. If you don't have a drill press, that's cool. Just use a hand drill. Should work just fine. But it's a 5/16 drill bit. It's a little bit bigger than your 7/16 headed bolt. But I wanted a little bit of wiggle room. I'm going to use washers anyway. And I, again, drilled those out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the board back out of the truck, line up the holes, mark the holes, and go ahead and drill out the holes. Then what I'll do next is I will mark the holes that'll go up along the upper side. And I'll mark those where I want them to go. And remember that there is a hole already in the fender. You'll see it on the other side there, right there. That is actually going to be right inside that flange. So it's going to be a part of the fixture of the tub is going to use that bolt. That's a fender bolt. It's also the bracing that's used for up under the fender that comes up on the outer side of the fender, like right here. That's where it starts, and it goes up on the inside of the fender, and it hooks also into that bolt hole. So when I get the tub up here along this side, I will mark from the inside. I'll mark where that hole is on that flange. That will be my first hole. And then I'll just eyeball it. Well, I'll measure it out so that it's evenly accordingly. Where I want the holes to go into the fender. Okay. They're a lot of clearance. They're not going to hit my tires at all, but I will check that prior to installing. But this flange is way up higher than where my truck sits. If you're getting your truck a lot lower than mine, most likely that may interfere, but mine's clear at that point. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, y'all, so as I was doing this, I took the board out and I went over to mark the holes to drill through the board. And I realized probably not a good idea to do that. Leave the board in the truck first, because what happens is when you push this thing up along the side of the bed, you're not, I thought flush, I would have been flush with the board. And so it actually moved my whole wheel hub closer. I mean, it's not much, but it's a little bit, it's this way. And when you do that, it's gonna, your holes are gonna move. I mean, a fraction, but still, you want them lined up as best as you can. So put the board back in. You don't have to bolt it down or anything, but put it back in your bed if you haven't already taken it out. And put this flush up against with the inner side of the bed. Put it where you want it in relationship to the cutout and all. Make sure everything that's cut out is hidden so you can't see it. And then go around and mark your holes. Once you mark your holes, then you can take it out and you can drill them out accordingly. You could drill them out while it's in there if you wanted, but I'm telling you, that one and that other corner might be a little tricky to get a drill, in there. The other ones won't be as bad, but that one would be tricky, those two. And there we have it. All the holes are drilled according to where I wanted them. Ready for bolts to go in. Just by the way, I could have went with a smaller drill bit, but I wanted a little bit of wiggle room because I want to use washers anyway. So I went with a 5/16 drill bit instead of a quarter. A quarter would have worked, but it would have been tight. So you have the option. All right, guys, so let me give you kind of a visual of what I was talking about. So I got all the bottom done, okay, drilled out. So this is the inner side. Cleaned it up pretty good. What I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to primer this. I'll do a self-etching primer. And then I'm going to take probably spray on bed liner. And I'm going to bed line all of this so that it's protected. and even the wood will be protected. So I'll probably coat the wood first and then do all of the spray and bed liner in here. I've already did it to the inner side of the fender wells. You see all the mud and dirt? If you know me, I drive my trucks. Anyway, to get that first hole, this is that bracket that I was telling you about that goes through the fender, okay? And there's a hole, I showed you on the top side, but with the bracket lined up, it's gonna, you know, line up accordingly. But what you do is I just pulled it aside and I stuck a Sharpie marker in there while this was here. So I was actually up top side and held the fender or the wheel tub in place up against the bed. And I just found the hole with my finger, put the Sharpie marker in there, and I marked to where the hole's going to need to be. So I'm going to go ahead and drill that one out so that I see it from the other side, and then I can mark where I want the other bolts to be. Because as you can see there, after you get the first one in, you've got two other bolts on either side for the fender. But I don't want to put like one right there and one right there. So I'll space them out to where it'll look nice, if that makes sense. All right, here we go. So got the holes drilled for the bedside bolts. I started off with 2 inches from the bottom of each side, and then I went up 6, 6, and then 6, and then vice versa on the way down. You'll see a couple extra marks, but those are not holes. That one right there and that one right there there aren't holes. So I just took a Sharpie marker and marked them on the bed side, and now I will remove the tub and drill the holes in the side. Alright, so a little progress as to where I'm at. Got the wheel tubs primered with self-etching primer. A couple different kinds out there. This was the one that was available locally. I've used it before, it's fine. But I got all the holes drilled in both of the tubs, and I got them primered, self-etched primer. Now I'll put the red oxide color on it and continue on. Let me show you what I've got going on over here. Got this side cut out, much cleaner cut, and I've got the line marked out in which to cut the wood out. I am going to take the piece of wood out like I did over here. This side is done as far as all the holes being drilled in the side wall or the side bed and also the wood. So I just got to clean all this up, and then once the primer dries, I'll install this one and then install the trim piece back, and then final will be the trim pieces on, you know, the L brackets that go here and back here, and I'll do those on both sides at the same time. So we're getting there. What I did, so this side, to cut out that arch, I used an angle grinder. It worked, but it wasn't the most efficient. You guys probably have torches and other things that you could use. I didn't, so I used an angle grinder. But for this side, I decided to go and buy a pneumatic sawzall, if you will, from Harbor Freight. It's on sale, $34.99, and man, it is slick. Nothing bad to say about that thing. So if you don't have one of those, 35 bucks. The blades were another 12, but well worth it. The cut was much easier, much cleaner, and so that's where I'm at. All right, so we're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there. Cleaned up the bed a little bit, you know, brushed out all the shavings and such. I got a spot here that I need to touch up on the bed, the bedwood. I got the angle grinder in there, so I gotta basically sand that out. It's not all noticeable with the tub in, but a little bit of it is, so I'll sand that out, stain it, poly it. And you know, got all the holes drilled. So next thing will be to replace the stainless here between this bed, these two bed slats, and then the L brackets. You know, the L brackets will have to be cut and then you know, fit on this side and on that side. Same thing over on this side. You know, with that etching, I etched the inside of the bed wall there, and it's a good scratch. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Just use a pencil, and then use a compass to trace out the bottom line for the lip. That's what I would have done. So I'm going to have to I'm going to sand that out as well. Etch prime that again and prime it before I install both the tubs. Just because it's the time to do it if you're going to do it. So I do have a bed cross member right there that I still need to whack off about 2 inches of. As you can see there, it's still hanging out. So I gotta whack that off. And then I'll probably stain this board on the edges. And then I'll cover it with something, but then again, like I mentioned, I'm going to spray the entire inner fender well, inner fenders on both sides with like a bed lining, so, and it'll all be black. And hopefully you won't even notice then. I think I discussed this before, but there's a couple ways that you can install these. One of which is what I did here, which is just bolting it to the bed wall and the wood flooring. Either way, you got to bolt it to the bed wall and the wood, whether you expose the lip like I did, or if you come from the inside and, you know, or from the outside rather, and push the tub in this way to where your flange is on the inside rather than outside. You're going to have a flange and you're going to have bolts either way. So this is the way I did it. I think it came out pretty good. I will be back. Okay, so I sanded out the that etching marks that I made and primered it and then painted it to match. Yeah, you'll see the difference, but that won't last long. I live down a dirt road and it's always dusty, so it'll match sooner rather than later. I ended up having to do refinish the top of the boards, the two boards. There was some scratches that I showed you earlier that I had to fill, and since I put more stain on it, then I went back to lacquer it, and when I lacquered it, the entire thing turned white. So it was a reaction. So I had to basically strip it all down, restain them, and poly them, polyurethane both. And so I've got all that done. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tubs in, bolt them to the sides of the bed. Once they're bolted to the bed, then I'll bolt them to the floor, and then I'll put the stainless strips back in. So that should button it up, and I'll show you when I get that done. All right, here we are coming along. So I got it all bolted in to the bedside and the wood. Stainless strip going in next on both sides, and then I'll do the L stainless up against the wood bed, or the bed wall and the wood. So it's looking good. You know, I kind of like the bolts showing. I mean, because it is all over the truck. I never painted them when I was putting it together. But most likely going forward, when I paint the truck, I'm not going to leave them exposed. So since all the rest of them are exposed, I'm going to keep it that way for now. Probably put too many bolts in it, but hey, it ain't going to go anywhere. So I think it's coming along. Okay, so got both tubs installed with the strips, stainless strips back in place. All I have left is to do the L strips on both sides. So I'll be doing that here. It might be a little dark, but got everything bolted in. Came out pretty nice. Really nice, actually. Again, I'm going to probably, I will be bed lining all this. Might be able to see the other side a little bit better because of the light. I did notice that I did have to take out some of this bracket here to get that washer and nut on that bolt, and that happened on both sides. I did skin up the frame just a little bit, not much, just the paint. So I'll hit that again. Assembling this, what I did first was I put screws in around the bottom, or bolts around the bottom, but I didn't put nuts or washers on the bottom yet, just to line up the holes. And then I did the top one first, because remember, that's a hole that's already there. And then I went down on each side and I did the bed side first. So I did all those bolts first. And the reason I did that was because if you did the wood first, the actual tub will push, it'll pull it down this way, and when it pulls it down this way, your holes may not line up exactly, and so you got to then fiddle with the wood, bring it up and then put the holes in. I mean, it was just, so do your bedside first, and then do your wood. That's what worked for me, and it worked great. I did have challenges on the bolts to the bracket. You have to line up the bracket, the fender bracket, and then the fender hole, and then this, and then I have the welt, the fender welt, which is the black strip here trim that you gotta feed it through. That was a little bit of a challenge. But other than that, it went fairly smooth. So I will keep you updated here, and I'll show you the finished deal once I get it done with the last pieces of stainless. All right, y'all. So I'm getting closer. You can see that the L bracket stainless strips I've cut and fit them to either side of the wheel tub. Basically what I did was I set the strip down along the side, and I lined them up with the holes that were already there. Okay? Once I did that, I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. I'm looking down, right, and at the time this was like up here because it was a full strip. I couldn't get it because the wheel tub is there now, so I couldn't get it down. So basically I lined it up like so, and I took a square to make sure that the lines were lined up, and then I did the same for here and the same for here. Now when I did this one, I marked it to where the mark would be over this bolt, and originally I was going to use that bolt hole to bolt the stainless strip down, but after I got it looking at it, it didn't look right because you got this lip down this way as well. So what I did was I still cut it longer, and then what I did was I put it up against here, and then I marked where the arch comes down, about right there, and I brought it around and marked it here, and then I continued the arch down, continued this arch down, and then I cut it out. And so what you see here is you see that it's not perfect, but what I did was I cut it to where it's like so. And then I've got the hole that was already there from the strip before the tubs were installed. So I'm going to use that hole accordingly. So that makes this strip, basically all three holes are there. And then you have one that goes into the, if I can find it, there it is, that goes into the bed side and into the fender. That's a fender bolt, okay? The same thing I did over here. Okay, so again, I put the strip up here first because it was not cut. Lined up the holes, used a square. See that you squared up now. And I did the exact same thing. I cut it about right here, and then I marked it here, and then continued out. I used an angle grinder, and then you can see, you know, that's pretty good. So now this one has two bolts, okay? So I gotta make another bolt hole here for the third bolt. So I'll mark it here. I'll also mark one over there so that they're evenly spaced with one another. So I gotta drill one over in that area, do the same for this side, and I'm going to use the same pins. So I'm gonna have to, you know, take probably a Dremel tool after I drill the hole, a Dremel tool to square it out. That way, when the square head goes in, you know, it catches it to where you can tighten it from below. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. You can see over there, did the same, and that one over there. And you can't really tell the difference unless you're really looking at it, but I think it's I think it works. So I'll drill these holes, and I'll let you see the end results. Okay, so I took the strips out and I marked where I wanted. I went from 2 inches from this tip in on both sides, 2 inches in. I took a 1/4 inch drill bit over on my drill press and drilled out the hole. And then I am taking a Sharpie marker and squaring it off, just so that I don't take too much off. Just take a little bit at a time, using a Dremel tool with a grinding tip, and I've got my bolt here for trial purposes, and I will shave away some of, I'll shave it into a square, and then I will just continue to shave a little bit off until the bolt goes all the way through. Alright, here are the strips. I used a 5/16 drill bit. I measured from this tip 2 inches in on each. Yeah, and they're marked up, I know. Be careful of that. The bolt head will cover that up though, so that's good. Anyway, 2 inches from here on both. 5/16 drill bit over there on the drill press. You don't need a drill press, just do use a hole punch, you know, to mark your hole so your drill bit won't spin on you, spin out, walk on you, whatever you want to call it. And then I used my Dremel and this is the bit that I used. It's not a Dremel bit. I bought this supposedly titanium drill bit set a while ago. I don't even remember where I got it. Probably at Harbor Freight or someplace. I think that is actually where I got it. So this is what I found that helped. So what I did was, after I drilled the hole, I just put a square around it with my Sharpie marker, and then I used the drill bit to kind of square it off, and I kept trying to fit the bolt in until it's now in, to where it now will hold it when I go to secure it. So both of those are done, and now time to bolt everything in. All right, check it out. We are complete. Make sure when you, before you put your tires back on, you clean off your rotors and everything. So that's the underside. Strips are now in place, all bolted down. And the other side. This was the better side of the two. This was the second side that I did. I need to hit that with paint again, but let the first coat dry. But this one I kind of knew what I was doing, so it went a lot smoother, a lot easier. But yeah, so I will put the tires back on, sit her back down, and we'll show you how she sits.